Welcome to the Champs App podcast, where we help players and parents demystify the world of minor hockey development and recruiting for both girls and boys. On today's episode, I talk with Maura Crowell, who is the head coach of the Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs. We discuss her lengthy coaching career at the Prep, D3, and D1 levels, go into detail about Minnesota Duluth, and do a deep dive on the recruiting process, including the upcoming June 15th call date. Stay tuned for the end of the episode, where Maura tells me the most amazing recruiting story I've heard since starting Champs App. This was an awesome conversation with Maura, so I hope you enjoy it. Champs App is your recruiting and development co-pilot. Champs App helps athletes, coaches, parents, and agents/advisors navigate the world of youth sports. We recently completely redesigned Champs App so that all our offerings fit together seamlessly to dramatically improve the user experience. Next time you visit Champs App, you will see that it is much easier to use Champs App as your co-pilot for recruiting and development. While we will continue to provide free content and tools like podcasts, articles, and directories on our website, some new content will require a free Champs App account to access special analysis and information. We have made it easy to create a free Champs App account without the need to create an online profile. Our latest free tool is the Champs App Team Coach Directory, a powerful resource designed to simplify your search for D1, D3, and youth sports coaches in one convenient place. Whether you're a parent, player, or youth coach, our directory offers a seamless way to find, research, connect, or message coaches across women's college hockey. In addition, our first premium product has been the Champs App messaging tool, which is the fast, easy way to send error-free messages to coaches. Champs App messaging cuts the time to send emails to coaches by over 50%. Over the coming months, we will continue to offer additional premium tools and services to our community. We still have a long way to go to achieve all the big goals we have for Champs App. You will see new offerings being released over the coming months, so look out for more announcements on social media, in your email, and in the app. We look forward to helping you on your journey as your sports recruiting and development co-pilot. I'm very excited to have on the podcast Maura Crowell, who is the head coach of the University of Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs women's hockey team. Originally from Mansfield, Massachusetts, Maura attended prep school at St. Mark's and then played 4 years of college hockey at Colgate. Immediately after graduation, she began her lengthy coaching career at her alma mater of St. Mark's before moving to D3 coaching roles at Connecticut College and UMass Boston. She then moved up to D1 as an assistant at Harvard before becoming the head coach in 2015 at UMD. While at UMD, Maura has coached the team to 2 Frozen Fours, including being the runner-up in 2022, and was also involved with USA Hockey with 2 stints as the head coach of the U18 women's team, including winning gold once. Welcome to the podcast, Maura.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Nice job on the intro.
Thank you very much. You got so much that I could talk, and there's so much I left out as well. So we're going to get into it, and you're going to share that with us as you kind of go through your hockey history, like we do all our guests. So why don't we start off with just how you started playing hockey and how you ended up making it to playing college hockey?
Sure. Yeah. My biggest influence when I was a kid was my dad. He played hockey, high school and in college, what is now UMass Lowell. It was Lowell Tech back in the day when he was there. And he got me and my brother into it, playing out on the ponds. And I started figure skating. I made a deal with my parents that I would do figure skating classes if I could eventually get into those black skates. So we made an agreement, and once I switched over to those black skates, I never looked back.
Do you think starting on figure skating actually helped you with your hockey skating?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I did lessons, and it was just in the center circle while public skating was going on, and we did crossovers and edge work for an hour. So whether you're on figure skates or hockey skates, that's going to help you. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. And so you started playing hockey, and were you playing on the girls' team, boys' team?
Started with the boys. I mean, this is 80s, 90s, right? So not a lot of girls hockey at the public level anywhere, especially in Massachusetts. So started with the boys, switched over to Assabet Valley when I was about 13, and then switched to prep school a couple of years after that. And that was a typical route back in the day to get exposed to college coaches and things like that, because there was no showcase tournaments, just the structure like we have now for all of that exposure. So that worked out, and wound up at Colgate, had a great career there, and I graduated with a degree in German. So people say, oh, that makes sense why you went into coaching. I just love the language. I started it at St. Mark's. I'm not German. There's no like real family connection or anything. I just thought it was cool and different. And I was able to go to Germany while I was in college, and do a semester there after the hockey season. So it worked out great. And then when I graduated, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I went back to my prep school, as you mentioned, and started coaching there, and things sort of took off from there.
Great. I got one question about Colgate. So when you started there, it was a D3 program. They were part
Yes.
of the ECAC, but they transitioned in your final year to being D1. Maybe you could just explain some context for folks who don't understand kind of how that all worked back in at that time.
Yeah, it was an amazing process. Really, when I was being recruited, that was the plan. We're going to go D1, we're going to go D1. But obviously that takes some time and some finances and things like that. So we had a great run when we were D3, played in championship games at that level. Finally, in my final season, we went Division 1, and it was a hard year, not a lot of winning, pretty tough to jump right into the ECAC, playing the likes of, Harvard, Dartmouth, those guys at the time, St. Lawrence. They were really strong Brown programs back in the early 2000s. So it was a hard season, but now to see where Colgate has gone makes those years all worth it. And we're really proud. The alumni group is really proud of that program.
Yeah, in fact, Colgate this past season was better than all of those teams. So,
Yes, yes.
all right. So you were at St. Mark's, which is a great program now being run by Kirsten Matthews, who was head coach
Yep,
at St. Anselm and then also spent time at Boston University.
yep.
And then you moved over to Connecticut College with Kristen Steele, who
Yes,
has been there forever,
forever.
and
Yes.
has her own little coaching tree in terms of folks that have gone on to other things. Maybe just talk about how you ended up going to D3 and then getting the head coaching job at UMass Boston.
Yeah, Kristen was actually at Colgate when I was being recruited out of high school. So I knew her from my recruiting process, but she had moved on by the time I arrived at Colgate. But I just reached out to her over the summer and said, hey, I'm interested in getting into college coaching. Do you have any advice or know who I could reach out to? And she said, I need somebody here in about a week. Can you come? And I went like a week later, had a mattress on the back of my pickup truck, went down to New London, and that the rest is history. And that was a great situation because I got a master's. So I have my master's in teaching at the secondary level, and it was specializing in German at the time. But I think a lot of what I learned there certainly translates to coaching because it is teaching just in a different environment. So that was a really worthwhile 2 years there at Connecticut College.
And I'm assuming that, as you got your graduate teaching degree, you basically said, this is what I want to do. Like coaching is my direction, as opposed to going into the teaching field. How did that all transpire?
Yeah, you think it's a surefire thing when you're doing it, but you don't know what your path is. That's the thing with coaching, especially in those early days. You don't necessarily know, what your next step might be, what's going to be available, and financially at that time. And I'm sure it's still a case. People have to be able to figure it out because you're not making $1 million coaching hockey. So while it might be something you want to do, you really have to see that path. And luckily for me, UMass Boston, which was a very non-traditional path for me based on prep school, Colgate, Connecticut College, to go to a city school, which was a commuter school at the time, like UMass Boston. That was certainly outside the box, but it allowed me to step into a head coaching role at a really young age and continue on my coaching path.
Gotcha. So obviously, Harvard and UMass Boston aren't too far apart. So how did you end up at Harvard and moving up to the Ivy League?
Yeah, right down the street. So I spent 5 years at UMass Boston, had a really good track record there, had a lot of fun, learned a ton about coaching and developed a lot of my skills there. And obviously Harvard's down the street, great school. And they needed a coach, and I happened to be ready to make a move if it was the right situation. So sort of got connected there and had 5 great years at Harvard. It was, the time of that I was there was an Olympic year. So the head coach was the head coach of the Olympics. So I got to take over as an interim head coach that year. And that really, elevated, I think, my position in the coaching ranks and really helped me get the UMD job,
And
having that
I,
experience.
I believe that one year as interim head coach, you also got nominated for Coach of the Year. So that congratulations on that. And that obviously then made you obviously find some interest at some other schools. So maybe talk about how you ended up at UMD. I know there is a big connection between Harvard and UMD with various folks like Julie Chu and obviously Laura Bellamy who've come back and forth between Harvard and UMD.
Yeah, I think, in 2014-15, our Harvard team was really, really good. We were in the national championship game that season. So we had some really good years there at Harvard while I was there, and was sort of just building this resume, not really thinking about it. And the UMD job was open. And I was speaking with the people at UMD, and they were really, really interested. And I had never considered, going west. I don't know that there are a lot of Eastern people, Eastern coaches that go and coach in the WCHA. That would be something for you to look up. But for me, it was the opportunity to become a head coach of a D1 program, and not only, any old D1 program, one of the most successful storied programs in the history of women's hockey. A place, like your background shows, that loves its hockey and is set up for success. So when I had that opportunity, while I had never lived anywhere near Duluth, Minnesota, it was the right decision at the time for me, and yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah, so let's talk about Minnesota Duluth. Obviously, it's right on Lake Superior. It's about 150 miles north of Minneapolis, St. Paul. You have about 10,000 students. You got this beautiful arena, AMS Oil Arena, if I'm pronouncing it right. You're usually ranked in the top 3 in attendance every year. Maybe just talk about the school, the academics, and what it's like to go to school, on the lake.
Yeah, it's a beautiful location. When I got there, I saw the lake. It reminded me of the ocean. It's that big. Lake Superior and Duluth are very closely tied. Most activities revolve around the lake when you're in the city of Duluth. So it's beautiful. It's an outdoorsy city. We have a ton of hiking, biking, swimming, lake activities, winter activities. So it's very active, and there's lots to do, which I really enjoy. The school, we are part of the University of Minnesota system. So like any big public university system, they have different branches. So we are one of the branches. So the Duluth campus, and there are others like the one in the Twin Cities, University of Minnesota Gophers. So we're in the same academic system, different campuses, which makes them one of our biggest rivals, and makes that in-state rivalry pretty fun. As you mentioned, about 10,000 students, so a really nice size campus, where you'll see familiar faces, but you won't see them every single day. So you have a little anonymity if you want it, but in general, professors are going to be people that you see pretty often, whether it's at AMSOIL or up on campus. Our community is very intertwined with our athletics community, which is awesome. And that's our campus community and the Duluth community at large. Hockey is it in Duluth. So we have football. It's Division II football. The D1 sports at UMD are men's and women's hockey, and it feels that way when you're on campus.
Beautiful. And in terms of the academics, what are the typical programs that your players focus on?
Yeah, we have tons of options. So it varies from year to year. We usually have a good crop of student athletes that are in the business school. We have a very strong business program. So we have a lot of students doing that. We have a lot in the sciences, whether it's biochem or engineering. Currently, we have 2 that are in engineering, which is, I would say, the hardest major on campus, but they're able to do both, play hockey and pursue their passion of engineering. And, we would never say, oh, you can't study this because of hockey. We make it work, and we're flexible because at the end of the day, the degree is the most important thing that they're going to walk away with. And we want to make sure that they can do everything that they want to do and do it really well.
Perfect. All right. So let's transition now into your coaching staff. 2 or 3 years ago, I had Laura Bellamy on, who was an assistant at the time on your staff, and obviously she's moved over to Harvard. So at that time, in order to be on your staff, your name had to rhyme with Dora, but that has
Yes.
completely changed. So
Yes.
you still have Laura Schuler on
Yep.
your staff, but now you've added an Emma and a Justin, Emma
Correct.
Sobiek and Justin Grant. So maybe just talk about your coaching staff and how you divide responsibilities, and how things work.
Sure. Yeah, we're fortunate to be able to add a third assistant coach last summer. So there are four of us. I'm the head coach. Laura Schuler, longtime coach, great resume, former Canadian Olympic team coach. She's been with us for 3 years now, but she was on the UMD staff prior. So she's spent, I think this is like going to be her 11th season working at UMD in total. She's in charge of power play and the offense. Emma Sobiak, who played at Bemidji and worked at Bemidji prior to coming to UMD, works with our defense and our penalty kill. And then our newest assistant, Justin Grant, is in charge of our goaltenders. And he also does our video. So during games, he's tagging our games, and I'm on the mic with him up in the coach's box.
Gotcha. And actually, I'm going to talk about the playoffs for the NCAA playoffs. So I'm assuming Justin helped out with the offside against when you were playing Connecticut in the first round of the playoffs, because
He did, but I have to give it, and I've given the credit in the post-game press conference. It was actually one of our players,
oh,
Brenna
really?
Furman, on the bench that turned around faster than anybody else. Before we called to each other, she said that was offsides, coach, challenge. And I was like, okay. I mean, it was going to be the end of the game, so you don't have anything to lose. So we're going with it, but she was so emphatic. So I yes, Justin confirmed, but I give Brenna the credit on that one.
Yeah, and the reason why that offside was so vivid to me is because it's the one play that drives me crazy, is when a player doesn't have to go offside, and they did, and that really basically cost them the game. So congratulations to you on winning it, 1-0 in overtime. But
Thank you.
let that be a lesson to the players to make sure don't go offside unless there's a real reason for it, that you're coming out of zone, not going into the zone too early.
Oh, it's so hard. It's so
Yeah,
hard as a player. I know. It was unfortunate, obviously, for UConn and the emotions of the whole thing. Just wow.
yeah.
But for us to be able to overcome that devastation, to get back out there and execute and get it done in the end was, a very special moment in UMD women's hockey history.
Absolutely. Now, the thing which I didn't also like about how the playoffs were run on the women's side is that you were playing too good of a team. You shouldn't have been playing Ohio State in the second round, in my opinion. You should have been ranked fifth in the country, probably gotten a bye to the second round. But instead of playing and even if you didn't, you should have at least played Stonehill in the first round and had a much easier time and much easier path. Now, it may not have made a difference given how strong the Ohio State team was, but still, I don't know. How do you feel about how they do the rankings and the setting of the playoffs based on that you're
Well, we
really
gotta
one of
get
the
we
top
gotta
five
get
teams
you
in the
on the
country?
championships committee based on that analysis right there. I certainly would like. I'd like your bracket better. Um, I think it's just a really difficult system with 11 teams. So that's something we just talked about in Naples at our coaches meetings. We're really pushing to expand to 12 because it just the format doesn't make a whole lot of sense as it is. In terms of the math and the structure, I think the math is the math. So I can't, I'm not a math major. So as far as I know, it's pretty good. But yeah, I think it's it's always going to be difficult every year unless you're in those top four spots. So that's our goal. Get into one of those top four spots and don't make it close.
All right. Well, someone who did the analysis and does like math, I still think that you got the short end of the stick, and that's not really
Thank
the
you.
words I'd like to use, but that's what I am going to use. Um, Anyhow, so related to that though, you play in the WCHA, and the reality is 4 out of the five top teams in the country are from the WCHA, and they don't want to have all four or all five of the teams be the top ranked teams. So maybe we just talk about how competitive the WCHA is, because literally every night you're playing a good team. It doesn't matter if they're the eighth team or the second team. You're still going to have a dogfight on your hands.
Absolutely. That's what I love about it. You can't take a night off. I think people might see the records of our lower end teams and think, oh, this team is just as good as that team. And you just don't understand if that's what you think. And it's like I said, night in, night out, it's a challenge. Any team can beat anybody on any given day. I think what I love about it is there are different challenges. There's a mental component that is really hard to replicate when you're playing a team that people expect you to beat, but they're actually really good and physical. Our league, the way we ref, the way we coach, we're allowed to play a physical style of game. So if you're playing a more talented team, there are ways to X that out by playing a physical brand. And if you get a hot goalie, look out. And we have some tremendous goalies in the WCHA. So it's an awesome league. So that's the mental component, and then the physical speed component of some of the high end teams. It's just you can't take a shift off, and the pace is so fast, and the intensity of every shift, whether it's a face off play or obviously special teams, the intensity, the focus that's required of our players to understand what's going on out there, it's the real deal. And I think that's what sets our players up really well to be successful. And now the PWHL, but it also sets our players up well for when they go and they get invited to a national team event. They're prepared. They've um, been coached very, very like intensely, and specific hockey X's and O's are really impressive. So yeah, I love the league, and it's a challenge, and that's what makes it fun.
All right, we're going to come back to some national events that you've been a part of from USA
Okay.
Hockey in a moment, but I still want to keep focused on the WCHA for a sec. So you're going up against Wisconsin and Ohio State, who have clearly been the two of the top teams in the country for multiple years. How do you compete against them? And not just on the ice, but also in the recruiting world, and going up against them not just on the June 15th of the calendar year, but also in the transfer portal.
Sure. So on the ice, we compete with them because we are a very tough, very disciplined team. If you ask anyone that plays against us, a lot of them will say, yeah, that the structure. Duluth has great structure, so they're tough to beat, and we usually have great goaltending. So, we've got kids that can put the puck in the net, then you have to get through our structure, and then you have really good goaltending, so we can frustrate some of those high-end teams. Off the ice in the recruiting battles, I think, I mentioned this before, but UMD is a hockey school. We're not a football school. I'm not going to take you to a football game in September. I'm going to take you to a hockey game when you're here visiting. The whole community, I think it's the best hockey town in America. And I know Detroit might argue with me on that, but I think the whole community of Duluth rallies around Bulldog hockey. If you want to go to a hockey game, you're not driving 2.5 hours down to see the Wild. You're coming to Amsoil to watch the Bulldogs. And I think players love that. They want to be the big dogs on campus. And so that's a big piece of our pitch, our recruiting. And, I think the rink behind you is the best rink in the country. And I say that I am biased, but really, if you look at it, it's unbelievable to have women's hockey playing in there, practicing in there every single day.
Beautiful. And so now let's talk about specifically about the transfer portal. So clearly Ohio State has used that as a key component to restocking assets. No better example than Kayla Barnes, coming over from BC for her graduate year and, winning a national championship along with Hannah Bilkin. So, how do you think of the transfer portal from your perspective. If I look at what's been reported from this, the past couple of months, you've lost some players and you've gained some players. So is that a net positive to you? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I want to get the best players out of high school club hockey come in and get back to the 4 years that we're traditionally expecting players for. So I think that's always going to be our focus. I love development. I love taking a high school player and watching them grow, become a part of our culture, develop into leadership positions. That's why I got into hockey, was to make future leaders, have a positive influence on young women's lives. And we do that through hockey, but I love that process. And I think that's what makes UMD really special, is that connection. When you hear our alums talk about playing for us, it really, like, it sticks with them for the rest of their lives. So that's always going to be something that we're going to focus on, and go to battle with those schools that you mentioned, and hopefully win some of those battles and get the right kids for us. I do see a lot of value in the portal as well, when we can get the right players. The first player we ever got out of the portal was Elizabeth Jaguar, Patty Kazmaier winner, national champion, unbelievable player, comes over to our team for her 5th year and helps us get to the national championship game in 21-22. So from that standpoint, we want to be selective in who we're getting out of there and make sure that they're the right fit. That's really important to us, and that they're going to help us win, because that's what we want to do. We want to win. We compete with the best teams in the country, and the way to do that is to make good decisions when you can in the portal. So we're kind of a hybrid model, where we're gonna get the best out of the high school age group that we can develop over the years, and then we're gonna take a couple from the portal that can make us better.
Gotcha. Okay. And just really quickly, I'm assuming because you have such a large school and you have probably multiple graduate degree options, does that help you to get those graduate players?
100%.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. So now we just grazed over it, but the you spent a lot of time with USA Hockey, both as an assistant coach for the under-18s and the head coach, and I'm assuming you still go back every so often in the summers to help out with some of the camps. I'm wondering, how much has that helped you with the recruiting, from a recruiting perspective, and getting to know some of these high-end players?
Yeah, certainly, it helped quite a bit. It was a big chunk of my time in my early years at UMD. My last U18s was 1920, when we won in Slovakia. And yeah, a lot of those players that I coached over the years wound up being Bulldogs, whether it was as freshmen or later in their career paths. So and even if they didn't play on the team, the camps that you worked at, they were maybe in the final select camp and they hadn't advanced. So it's amazing how many names are still present in my mind from those years, and obviously current as well. So it's a huge impact on recruiting, because especially as the head coach in the later years, we didn't have a scout for USA Hockey when I was doing that. So I was very ingrained in the process, meaning, here are the top kids from each district, who's going to select camp, who's going to these other camps. So really understanding the player pool very, very well helped, of course.
Gotcha. And, related to this, when I look at the folks that are committed to you to come in either 2024 or 2025, over 80% are under 18 players from whichever country. I'm curious, is that basically what you're looking for, is the under 18 players? And if you're not an under 18 player, you probably don't have much of a chance of making it to Minnesota Duluth?
Well, what I do know also from being a part of the process is it changes with every coach that comes in. So I think it's very subjective. It's not an objective process. So what I like as a coach is going to be different than what someone else might like. So just because you don't make an U18 team doesn't mean that I don't think you should have, right? Everybody has their opinion. So no, you don't have to be on a U18 team to make our team. The ones that we pick, a lot of times we get them before they even make those U18 E18 teams. When we got Caitlin Kramer from Canada, who's going to be a freshman and was an unbelievable U18 player for Canada. She hadn't put on that jersey yet. So, a lot of it happens after the fact. So we pick the players that we like, and they wind up making those teams sometimes, and sometimes they don't.
Perfect. Okay, so now I do want to drill down now on some recruiting stuff.
Mhm.
You've done all your scouting, I'm sure, for this year's recruiting cycle. We're coming up on June 15th. Now, I don't want to talk specifically about this year's June 15th. You've obviously done this for a long enough time that there's clearly a pattern to how you handle this time of year. So I'm just curious, do you traditionally make offers on June 15th? And is that usually the plan of you already kind of have your short list of folks that you want to be making offers to on June 15th?
We've backed off of that in recent years based on feedback from families and high school or club coaches. So we take it as the players that we're interested in sort of want to take it. So if they talk to us about, hey, you're our top choice, and that player happens to be our top choice, things can move faster. But a lot of families and players in that spot want to take their time. They want to take their calls. They want to eventually go to visits, and those can't happen until August. So now you've got this 2-month window that you're working with those people. And I think it's really important for both sides is building that relationship over the course of the summer. And I like not having to move so quickly at the beginning, because you can find out what you're getting into and make sure it's a really good fit.
I gotcha. So I actually do want to drill down on that a little bit more. But just one kind of question before that is, how big is your short list of like, yeah, these kids we are definitely most interested in,
It
in general.
depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the size of the class that you need. So last year we brought in a massive 2025 class. So the summer was extremely busy, because if you're looking for, say, 5 to 7, you should be talking to probably 40 to 50 players. That's what we're doing. And maybe other schools can do less. It depends on where you are and what your philosophy is. But we're gonna if we need a big class, we're gonna figure out, yeah, we need a deeper pool, a deeper depth pool to be communicating with, because you never know what's gonna happen. This year, 26 is a smaller class for us, so we won't have to talk to 40 to 50 families
Gotcha.
and kids. Yeah.
So let's just say there's about 30 players on your short list. Of those
Yep.
30, prior to June 15th, how many players have you or your staff talked to within the rules before June 15th? Whether it's the under 18 camps or showcases or, whatever credentialized events, how many will you have actually gotten to know personally?
Not many. Not
Really?
many personally. A lot of our work is done through coaches and um, contacts of those players to do our research. We're basically watching them on the ice. If we are at a showcase or something and we happen to be on the ice with them, sure. But even those experiences they're short windows. You work a PIP event, you're on the bench with 20 kids, maybe there's one that you're interested in, things like that. But in general, a lot of that for us starts on June 15th. So that's where the slower process makes more sense for both sides. So they can get to know us, we can get to know them.
Gotcha. Will you have done reference checks like on their current or previous coaches prior to June 15th, or will you do that after June 15th?
Yeah, we try to do a lot of that legwork ahead of time, so we know what we're getting into and we can narrow our list down.
Gotcha. And now, in terms of signaling to the player that you might be interested, I'm curious, do players, already know that you might be interested before June 15th, whether it's their coaches saying, hey, yeah, like the school came and talked to me, or maybe you send them surveys, or, in the mail, like how many of the, let's say roughly 30 players do you think would have a pretty good idea that you'd be interested in them before June 15th?
That's a great question. I don't know, because every school can send out a questionnaire, survey. If you have a camp, you can invite them. So I don't know that they would say, "Oh yeah, this school, this school is really interested in me because I got 25 of those survey emails." So it would be that might have to be a question for the kids and families, because from my standpoint, I'm not 100% sure, because you can't talk to them. So it's just.
Okay, let me rephrase the question.
Yeah.
Of the 30, once again, not talking about this year, just talking in general in your experience,
Yeah.
if there are 30 kids on your short list, how many of them would you have sent a survey to or an invite to one of your camps?
Oh yeah, all of them.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to just get
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that that
All of them. Yes.
okay. Perfect, perfect. All right. So what actually, you mentioned it's more of an intro call, not an offer call on June 15th. But in terms of just timeline, what just for folks to understand, what usually happens between June 15th and say, early August?
Yeah, I think we do a very good job of that. I think that's where what we hear from other kids that we're talking to, and kids that finally decide to come to UMD whenever that may be, and it's now like end of August, September, sometimes as late as October, is that they really liked our process. They felt like we had a good plan. We weren't just talking about nothing all summer, and that we were invested in the process. So I think we do a really good job of that. I think it's well thought out. And I think families and players really appreciate that, so that they know, okay, we have a call with the school and here's what we're going to talk about this week, versus, hey, how's your week going? What are you up to? And there's no real purpose other than I called that kid.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, and so typically, for your top players, when are they and you guys coming to decision, that it's the right fit? Is that usually in the middle of August, early September?
Yeah, even later, because the high end ones tend to be busy in August because they've got their national team events that month. So that really eats up a chunk of the month. And I like for them to be able to focus on that and go all in on those camps and not worry about, scheduling a trip to us or phone calls with us. So it has pushed back to end of August, and then getting them in September is always tricky too with the tournaments. You've got a million things going on, school starting. So I've noticed over the past couple of years that the timelines are getting later and later. So some of the 25, some of the high end players were, late September, October,
Yeah,
even November. So it's pushing back, which is fine.
yeah.
It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, with those players who can have, unlimited visits, they're going to go visit 5, 10 teams and then make their decision after they see them all, and then
Exactly.
and
Well,
that's
or
it.
they plan on it. This is, you said something about recruiting advice, and I'm sure we're getting to it, but I think a lot of people will say, "Yep, coach, I'm going to take 5 visits." I say, "Okay, I want to be in one of the first three because the last two tend to not happen,
Ah,
because that's 5 weekends or five
trips.
2-day visits. Just they get tired, they can't find the time, and you tend to find out where you want to go a little sooner than you think."
Perfect. Yeah. So before we get to the recruiting
I jumped
advice,
ahead.
yeah, no, that's no problem whatsoever. We got one more the opposite end of the spectrum of what happens on June 15th. We got a little story that I would love for you to share. It's kind of the most interesting recruiting story that I've heard in my years doing this with ChampsApp. So maybe just talk about your freshman goalie from this past season, Anna Bizek, and how she got recruited, because she did not get a call from you guys on June 15th, but she was on the bench back in September of 2024.
Yes, I think my first conversation with Anna Bizek might have been in August, prior to the start of her freshman year. So meaning
4 weeks.
4 weeks before school started, which is very unusual, very rare, but wow, what a great fit for the spot we were looking for. So my athletic director, I think they're from the same town or were nearby. He knew Anna's mom from working out at the same gym. And and he's a goalie. He played goalie at Notre Dame, and so he's got a special interest in goaltending. And we were really excited about our duo this year, and obviously looking for a third goalie, because it's important to have one for many reasons. And he said, "Hey, this Anna Bizek that I know is like a pretty good hockey player. Are you familiar with her?" I said, "No." So he started connecting me with like some of her videos and getting to know her. And eventually I was on the phone with her mom. Wonderful conversation. talked to Anna about it. It was very clear about what we were looking for. And man, she's just a very driven, independent person and got it done, because that was hard to do, get enrolled in a new school when she was already planning on going somewhere else. Fast track, the whole hockey side of things, getting, equipment and meeting the girls and understanding the workout program and all of the craziness that needs to happen, finding a place to live, all of that stuff. And she did a great job, and she was on our campus, like I said, 4 weeks later, and hasn't missed a beat.
Yeah, so for folks who think that, June 15th is the be all end all, here's an example of a player who literally waited to the last possible minute to and found an opportunity. And may or may not have even been looking for it, but luckily through some connections, it all worked out. So
Yes.
it's great for her. Yeah, I know she wanted to pursue a degree in accounting, and that was like the most important part of her decision was, do you have my degree? And obviously Minnesota Duluth does. So
Yes, very
yeah.
specific, wants to be an accountant. So she knew what she wanted, and luckily we had that for her.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so now let's get into recruiting advice. So why don't we just start off with, as it relates to June 15th, what advice do you have for players and parents as they kind of get to the June 15th deadline, and then even going forward, what is it that your advice is if players want to come to Minnesota Duluth, what is it that they kind of need to show you in terms of when you go out recruiting for 27s and things like that in the future?
Yeah, so do you want to talk 27s or do you want to talk June
Let's start
15th?
let's start June 15th
June
first,
15th
and then
first.
just what do you look for?
Sure, yeah. For June 15th, I think players tend to be really nervous. And the high-end players are going to get bombarded with emails and phone calls and trying to set up appointments throughout those first couple days. So just be prepared for that. Understand that it's coming. Understand that people are going to want to spend some time with you on the phone. So have a good night rest June 14th, because they might start early. Make sure you eat a good meal, have good energy. If you're a coffee drinker, have some coffee, because that's your first impression. And you can never make a first impression twice. So you want it to be good, whether it's a phone call or a Zoom call. Everybody sort of operates a little bit differently, but you want to present well and have good energy. And I would say bring a couple questions to each call, and you might not know who's going to call you, so just jot down a few things that are important to you regardless of who's calling. And that shows just a level of preparation, I think, and engagement for the coach, because as coaches we really, we have to bring it on June 15th, and we're calling several players. So it's a two-way street, and we want to have a good time. And I think a lot of coaches in women's hockey, as you know, Ray, are really, really good people. And what we find if we talk to a player at the end of the day, how have your calls gone? Oh, way better than I thought. People are really nice, and I'm having fun with it. Good. It should be fun. It's yes, it's intimidating, and we totally understand that, but it should be a really fun process. And while like I said, we're not going to do offers and a lot of pressure on June 15th, some schools might. So you also want to be prepared for that and sort of think about a response. I think that's all part of the preparation, with not only a list of questions, but kind of a what if you don't get a call from the school you wanted to hear from, or what if a school that you weren't even thinking about offers you a scholarship and wants to know an answer. How are you going to handle those things? I think that preparation and having conversations with your parents and coaches and anybody that is in your inner circle is really important.
Perfect. And if future years players want to get a call on June 15th, what do they need to do to stand out to you?
Yeah, I think, investing in the right events. First of all, you don't have to sign up for everything. I think there's enough pressure on families and kids to be at everything and do the right things, and really do your research on what events are going to have the coaches of the teams that you're interested in there, and what is the interaction going to be like. Are they going to be on the ice with you, or are they just watching in the stands? if you want to do their camp specifically, if a school is in your top 5, say, and they have a camp on campus, is that something that you want to do? That might be a good way to make that personal connection. So I think scheduling yourself wisely is important. Hopefully you're doing, your national team stuff if you're invited to that, and all the coaches will know that if you're there. So you check those boxes. And I think really working closely with your coaches, your current coaches, who are essentially your recruiting coordinators until you're able to talk to coaches yourself. So letting them know what you're thinking. If you don't have a plan, that's okay too. I'm totally open. I don't know what I want. That's okay. But having a good relationship with your coach, and making sure that that coach that you're working with is working for you, because that's part of their job.
Perfect. All right. So we need to wrap this up, but you did mention going to schools camp. So I believe you have a Bulldogs camp this summer. Maybe you just want to talk about it, when it is, and how folks can learn more.
Yes, we do have a camp. We run a camp every summer. This camp, we're in July. It is, I think, the 18th to the 21st. Don't quote me on it. It's in July on campus. We'll be at that rink that Ray's sitting in front of, playing all day, every day during camp. We'll have current and former UMD Bulldogs as our counselors. Full coaching staff will be in attendance. You stay in the dorms, and you get to live the life of a Bulldog for a few days.
Perfect. And I'll make sure to include links to your website in the show notes so that folks can find the camp and things like
Awesome.
that. So Maura, I
Awesome.
want to thank you so much for doing this. It was great learning about your exhaustive coaching history, your extensive coaching history, learning obviously all about Minnesota Duluth. And thank you for putting up with all my June 15th questions and the recruiting process. So thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely. I hope it helps families. That's what you're trying to do, and that's what we're trying to do too. So thank you for inviting me, and I'll see you around the rinks.
I really want to thank Maura for coming on the podcast. She shared some great insights into UMD and the recruiting process. You can connect with Laura via her Champs app profile, or learn more about the hockey team and their upcoming camps by checking out the links in the show notes. Introducing the Champs app messaging tool. Champs app messaging is the fastest, easy way to send error-free messages to coaches. The Champs app messaging tool ensures the coach's name, email, and school are correct without the need to look online and find each coach's contact information. With the Champs app messaging tool, you can choose from a variety of email templates to send. For example, one template informs coaches about upcoming events or tournaments, and another lets a coach know about new videos added to your Champs app profile. Each template automatically populates the message with the coach's name and school, and inserts personal information from your Champs app profile. This way, you can be sure the emails do not have errors. Personalize each message further to make it uniquely yours. Experience the convenience of the Champs app messaging tool yourself by logging into your Champs app account. For a limited time, we are offering the Champs app messaging tool at a low introductory price for an annual subscription. As we add more amazing features to the messaging tool over the coming weeks and months, these new features will be included in your annual subscription. So get started today by logging into your Champs app account to try out the new Champs app messaging tool and easily send error-free emails to coaches. Subscribe today before the price goes up.